So I have to ask you real quick. Do you remember the first time that you smoked cannabis?
I smoked cannabis when I was a kid in high school. I used to play in a band, and I'll never forget one of my bandmates came to practice one night, and I remember, they were all we took a set break, and everybody ran out to the van. I said, I want to go. And well, dude, you don't want no part of this. I said, yeah, I do. So I went back to that van, and from that point on, I smoked until I actually went through Marine Corps boot camp.
Now, wait a second. So you smoked out in the van, then you went back in to play the next set.
Hell yeah.
Now, how did that go?
It was probably the best set of music I've ever heard.
What is cannabis doing for you?
Put some dog tags together, man.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to PV Unfiltered. And we are still, Tommy's going to ring the bell, the #1 cannabis podcast in the nation. And listen, super excited. I'm just going to get to it. Montel Williams. I got to tell you, man, I watched probably every one of your shows. And it was, I mean, I hate to throw it out there, but definitely a super fan. It's amazing, we were on your podcast and that you're returning the favor. Try to lighten things up a little bit, but the pursuit to legalize has been it's been in you for how long?
So, long before this became vogue. A lot of people don't know, and I'm glad thank you so much for having me on. And I talk about it a lot on my podcast, Let's Be Blunt with Montel. A lot of people don't know that, I started my advocacy really almost 20 years ago, next month.
Think about that. 20 years ago. Yeah.
When you really stop and you think about that, and we think about the fact that, there's been so much movement in the cannabis industry in really the last 7 years. But 20 years ago, dude, I was out there on the street dangling by myself. And
well, not only that, listen, you're a celebrity. You're a celebrity. 20 years ago, to do what you were doing, you could have been blacklisted. You could have, yes.
Bullseye.
Yes.
Bullseye. Yeah,
I mean, you got to really take yourself back 10 years ago and talk about how hard it was to be a celebrity and talk about cannabis and using cannabis and whatnot. And now go back 20 years and just how bad it was. I mean, dude, it's crazy to think of how big your heart was on that side of it to be able to come out and put that in front of your career.
Well, what was really crazy is that, it was 20 years ago, really almost this month that I was really diagnosed with, had my full final diagnosis, verified diagnosis of having MS. And I was diagnosed at the end of, it was 22, in 1999.
It was 99, right?
Well, 99, I got my first diagnosis. Then I had to have a second opinion, got a second opinion, early 2000, validated that I had MS. And, back then, what a lot of people don't remember, though we do kind of understand, doctors only really had one mindset, and that was, the only way that they could treat neuropathic pain or they could treat anything was with opioids. And so I did the opioid dance back in, 99, 2000. And that opioid dance almost took me to, a place of full addiction. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, and whichever way you want to look at it, unfortunately or fortunately for me, my metabolism in my body has a aversion to opioids. So I don't get the same effect out of an opioid that other people do. That being said, back in 99, 2000, when I was first diagnosed and prescribed opioids for my neuropathic pain, I was taking probably 4 or 5 times what the normal human being could take. And because it wasn't actually working. And back then, we weren't even looking at it. Doctors weren't even looking at it that way. They weren't thinking about it. I wonder if a person could not, I'm not immune to, but I have an aversion where my body doesn't absorb enough of it. So I literally, if they prescribe me 1 or 2 every 6 hours. I was taking 4, 5, 6 every 6 hours.
Did they think you were selling it on the side or something? You know,
No,
I mean, it's like that's an incredible amount when you're talking about the average.
Yeah, but you know what was going on is because, again, you threw it out there. You said you're a celebrity. Well, you got to remember, as a celebrity, I was able to doctor shop. So every doctor, every person I knew that had the word doctor in front of their name, who was a friend of mine, I could say, oh, dude, could you write me a prescription for such and such, at a cocktail party or at a dinner? Would you write me a prescription? Would you do this for me? Would you do that for me? Would you do this for me? And, though it was a controlled substance, I was able to shop those substances. And I won't name the names, but, I went through the gamut of sets. All of those kind of drugs that start with such and such a set, such and such a set, such and such a set. I would get, I get 2 prescriptions from one person, 1 prescription from another person, 1 on the West Coast, 1 on the East Coast, 1 down in Florida, 1 in, Pennsylvania. I was able to doctor shop with friends of mine who literally were writing me enough prescriptions that, and back then, you got to remember, I think what a lot of people don't want to admit, and even our federal government won't admit, is that they were just as responsible for, the plague of the opioid, scourge that happened in the last 10 years as the pharmaceutical companies, because they just let them write the prescriptions, whatever they chose to write. So if I was getting a prescription for 100 pills from one person, I can get 100 from another person. I can get 50 from another person. I can get 75 if I was in a hotel and had the hotel reach out to their doctor. And I said, oh, I left my prescriptions at home. Can you write me something? I get 50 of them that night.
Wow.
So, for me to be able to overconsume was easy. But I was doing so to the point that literally I almost shut down my kidneys and my liver and almost shut down my entire intestinal tract. I still bear scars and bear symptoms from that abuse 20 years ago today.
How are you now?
Well,
I mean, you look great, man.
Well, I worked. I spent the last 20 years of my life working as hard as I can to see if I can mitigate or at least lessen the symptoms I have of MS. One of those things that I was doing is I worked very with a company in the last 10 years that's developed a medical device that literally has given me some really unbelievable relief. But I started really getting relief when I shifted over from opioids to cannabis. And that was back in 2001 and a half.
So I have to ask you real quick. Do you remember the first time that you smoked cannabis?
Oh, no, that goes back way before that. I smoked cannabis when I was a kid in high school, junior high school, as a matter of fact. I used to play in a band, and I'll never forget one of my bandmates came to practice one night. And, all the other guys, I was the youngest guy in the band. And, the guys would show up. And they were always for practice. They were always buzzing, you know what I mean? And they would go sit in the van before they came in. And, one night during a gig, I remember, they were all we took a set break, and everybody ran out to the van. I said, I want to go. And they went, dude, you don't want no part of this. I said, yeah, I do. So I went back to that van, and, from that point on, I smoked until I actually went through Marine Corps boot camp.
Now, wait a second. So you smoked out in the van, then you went back in to play the next set.
Hell yeah.
Now, how did that go?
It was probably the best set of music background that I'd ever heard. It seemed to, make me way more animated. But dude, I was tripping a little bit in the sense that I really didn't understand what was completely going on with me.
Right.
I was only 14 at the time, so.
Shit, we were the same age when we first smoked. And what were you playing? What instrument?
I used to sing and play bass and play trumpet.
Fucking, you were right up front.
I was out front. Yeah, I was out front. But from that point on, man, I never really looked back. I mean, I was one of those kids. Everybody used to back then. You get 4 people together, buy 1 6-pack or 1 8-pack, a pony bottle, Miller Lights, those little teeny bottles, and you lit for 3 days. So, I drank, but I didn't drink that much. And back then, you got to remember, this is a whole different time and era. You got to remember that when I was growing up, the drinking age was reduced to 18 for a period of time. You remember that? See, it's probably before you were even born. But, you know, I think it was 73, 70, no, 71, 2, and 3. Drinking age was 18. And so, you know, I've always, from the time I was maybe 13 on, I was 6 foot tall, though I was extremely skinny. But I grew tall young, and I literally had a mustache since the time I was 14. So I could literally.
So this guy's walking in and buying beers.
he was that guy.
Yeah. And that was before he was the Montel Williams.
I would walk in and buy beer, or walk in and buy, you know, a bottle of wine or something, you know, and, you know, back then there was all those crazy Boone's Farms and all.
Oh, yeah, Boone's.
Yeah, so people were, you know.
Little Mad Dog 2020.
Is Boone's Farms
Well, I
even
didn't
still
never do
around?
Mad Dog, but I was always a Boone's Farm, or something Hill Creek, something else, another. But then I shifted over, started using cannabis, and you know, I kind of, that was really my thing of choice until I entered the service, and then of course we were drug tested, so you had to lay that down. But you know, it wasn't until after I got out of service, and then after I started my talk show, that I kind of circled back to cannabis. But I wasn't even what I consider a real recreational user. I was probably using maybe once a week, you know, every other weekend. If you go to a party and somebody lit something up, I'd use it, but I wasn't actually seeking it out. I might have had a little teeny stash that set in a drawer that stayed there until I felt like touching it. And then it wasn't until literally that I got diagnosed with MS and a doctor said to me, look, dude, I'm not writing you any more scripts. And I'm going to contact all the doctors that I know that have written you some scripts and tell them to stop writing you stuff for opioids, or you're going to kill yourself. So, and he said to me, look, you know, I heard about, you know, some people who have MS like yours that they found some relief in, you know, that marijuana stuff. And I know it's a weird kind of marijuana too. It's not that regular marijuana. It's another kind of marijuana. It's got these weird CB something, C somethings in it. This is back in 2000, 2001. I started seeking out CBD laden plants. And back then, what we don't know, and a lot of people who think they know a lot about cannabis don't know that, you know, in the 1970s and the 80s, here in the United States, especially up in Humboldt County and in Kentucky, we attempted to grow CBD out of the plant the same way that we tried in the last 10 years to try to boost the highest, make the THC number as high as we possibly could by reducing the CBD number. So when I first started utilizing cannabis as a medicinal agent, there were people in the Humboldt County area, people up in San Francisco in the Bay Area that were growing plants, and they would, you know, find out that it had so much CBD in it that they were giving it away.
They couldn't put it out.
They couldn't put it out. So I literally, well, you know, I had a couple of people who were friends of mine who would call me and say, look, I just got a batch of this really heavy CBD cannabis that had THC in it also, but it had much more CBD in it. You want it? Come on out and get it. And I literally started my journey again in 2001, really shifting over from leaf and flower to consuming a lot of keef that was heavily laden with CBD. And I never looked back.
So obviously, like I said, it looks like think about this in that timeline and what typically happens with MS and whatnot. And you're doing really well. There's a lot that goes into this. What would you say is your main regimen for being where you're at? I'm really curious.
You know, I got to tell you something, dude. When I first found it, first thing, and I think this is something that people should do no matter what their chronic illness or what their illness may be, is the first thing you do is educate yourself. And, you know, when I got diagnosed, I spent, you know, the next 2.5 years literally scouring through every bit. And back then there wasn't an internet. So I was scouring through the library and finding books and picking up articles and finding out, you know, as much as I could about what MS was and what it really does. How does it affect the body? How can I do things to see if I can mitigate some of my symptoms? And, you know, one of the things that you know about MS is that inflammation is our greatest nemesis, you know? So inflammation in the body. And, you know, back then, I started to understand and started reading about the fact that there was this guy in Israel by the name of Meshulam who had discovered something called the endocannabinoid system that's responsible for our cellular homeostasis, which helps to keep our body, what's that mean? That means, the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, just right. Well, how do I make every cell in my body more not too cold, not too hot, but just right? And one of the ways to do that is to reduce inflammation. You can reduce inflammation in a myriad of ways. One is through your diet, one is through exercise, and one is through also cannabis, feeding that endocannabinoid system. And when I recognized that, I set about trying to do everything I could do to see if I could slow down inflammation in my body, slow down the progression of my disease if possible, and do it to the best of my ability. And that's been, I think, the one thing that's really helped me. I think very early on when I literally changed my diet almost immediately. I went almost vegan for maybe 4 years. I went vegetarian for 2, vegan for 1, and vegetarian for another one. But that helped immediately when I first got diagnosed to actually reduce some of the inflammation, helped to reduce some of my neuropathic pain. It was 7 years later that I discovered a phenomenal technology out of the University of Wisconsin that just recently received FDA approval. Just this last Friday, the FDA actually granted FDA approval for this device that literally works in neuromodulation through the tongue and through the pons area of the brain to help mitigate or help put the brain in a plastic state. So I was able to find pathways around some of the damage in my body, in my brain. And I think that, consuming the quantities of cannabis that I was consuming over the course of 10 years, I believe has helped actually increase the neural protection in my system and help me deal with the ravages of this disease, the way I have.
So with that being said, the regulations and whatnot 20 years ago, even coming forward to 3 years ago, the testing and the quality of what was going on. I know and this is a big issue. And you spoke very big on this. Was it about 7 years ago, on the fact of pesticides and the issues that are and were prevalent in cannabis.
I was screaming at the top of my lungs, brother, for 20 years about this.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden people we're catching up. I've been screaming for 20 years about CBD. We're catching up. I've been screaming for the last 12 years about the other cannabinoids, not just CBD. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I think this industry has made in the last 5 or 6 years. We don't progress educating ourselves or educating the consumer or educating the possible patient on the fact that there are so many. I mean, research out of Canada seems to indicate that there may be well over 160 cannabinoids, not just 64,
Yep.
over 160. We do know that the interaction of the cannabinoids with the terpenes and the flavonoids and the phytocannabinoids that are prevalent in this plant, all of these things work synergistically to help do what we know our endocannabinoid system needs, and that is bring our cells within, that Goldilocks zone. And so if we're going to consume cannabis, we should try our damnedest to consume it in the purest way that we can, rather than consuming it filled with all this detrimental, deleterious components that we add into it just to grow it. I mean, as much as we seem to believe that, everybody in this industry is in it with a good heart, that's bullshit.
No, that is bullshit.
There's a lot of people in this industry that are just trying to make money. I mean, the fact that you have pharmaceutical companies who were fighting cannabis for 40 years, now all of a sudden jumping on the bandwagon trying to say that it's good. I don't trust them.
Right.
Why the hell would I trust them? If you said that it didn't work, now all of a sudden you said it worked because it's better for your bottom line. I don't know what you're doing with it. What kind of pesticides are you using? What are you using to help grow it? What are these grow agents that you're using? When we start processing, let's go way back. I mean, I'm telling you, 15 years ago, I was trying to find as much cold water processed hemp or cannabis that I could find, especially in the keef world, because, so many people were using BHO and, trying to extract If I'm not going to go outside and stick my mouth around the exhaust pipe of a car, why would I put something in my lungs that's been processed with butane that somebody lied and said that they got all of the remnants of the butane out of?
Right.
And we know that that's not true.
It's impossible.
We know that, depending on what laboratory you test in, the results will come back different.
Still a huge problem
today.
Yes.
Not laboratory testing is laboratory is not right. Everybody does it differently.
But would you agree that now, compared to 15 years ago, we're in a much safer position through the regulations through the states as far as testing and quality that's coming across?
Which state? I mean, that's where you got to start asking.
Let's start with California. I think we're on a 62 panel test, and I understand what you're saying because we deal with testing every day.
Do you own the laboratory?
No.
Well, I mean, I
think it's always a problem.
I think until people like yourself or people like myself or somebody owns a laboratory and we're the ones who are supervising the people who are doing the testing, I don't feel safe.
So what do you do?
The only product that I consume now today is a product that I actually was involved in actually manufacturing and watching it be manufactured. I still have, I've got enough supply left to cover me for a while, and I consume that. I don't try to be, I'm not a jerk about it, but I've had people who see me places and oh, Montel, oh dude, come on, dog, man, I got something for you, and hand it to me. I'll hand it over and give it to somebody else.
Right.
If I don't know where it came from, I'm not putting it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And though, yes, some of the testing has gotten better.
Right.
But some of it's gotten worse. Some of it is just, flipping a switch and lying about the results.
Right.
It's
a huge problem.
Yeah. And there's states like Arizona that don't even require state testing, I guess.
Yeah, there's states out there, that their testing is so lax.
Correct.
It's really tough, especially at the volumes that they're doing.
Right. Now, have we gotten better than we were 20 years ago? Yes. But are we still allowing product to slide through? Yes. And, are we really paying close attention to the farms and the growers? I mean, look, we know for a fact that the plant itself leaches toxins out of the soil. The plant itself leaches heavy metals out of the soil.
Yep.
All the testing that's going on right now, most testing doesn't even include heavy metals.
Now we've hit it Michigan, we've hit it California. Looks like Oklahoma's going to adopt it as well. Arizona's still just kind of
doing Arizona
around. We're doing Arizona.
And so the cannabis industry is kind of like, I like to liken it to the hyperbarics industry. The hyperbarics industry existed in the United States for almost 20 years before we actually put any overseeing body over them. They kind of oversaw themselves.
Right.
And now we're starting to recognize that, guess what? Oxygen is medicine. So let's do some oversight. I don't have a problem with oversight. No one in this industry should have a problem with oversight.
Absolutely shouldn't. If you do have a problem with it, you got darker problems.
Bad actor.
Yeah, if you got a problem with it, you're part of the problem. But also, what we have to do is make sure that those who are doing the oversight know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me the most. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Am I happier today than I would have been 15 years ago? Heck yeah. Am I concerned today as much as I was 15 years ago? Heck yeah.
That's why you're you. That's why you're doing what you do. All right, listen, we're going to lighten it up a little bit because I got to know, how did the show come on? How does a guy, that's walking out to a van, 14 years old, singing, smoking weed, goes through the, goes and serves our country, does all these amazing things, and then how did the show come about?
I'm a little bit of a strange one, dude. Even back when I was in high school, that same kid walking out to a van, smoking a little weed and playing music in nightclubs where I had to go in the back door because I was too young to walk in the front door of the nightclub to play.
Right.
And I wasn't allowed to stay in the nightclub when the band wasn't playing. I had to go back outside. I couldn't stay in there while liquor was being served. I was that kid, but at the same time, I played sports. At the same time, I was a kid who was very much involved in student politics when I was a kid. I mean, I literally was, on the Maryland Association of Student Councils. I was on the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils in positions of either parliamentarian or, just as a member. I ended up running for president of my class 2 years in a row, which I was elected to junior and senior year. I was a student, appointed to the Board of Education in my senior year. And I'm that same kid still playing in the band at night. So, I had this brain that was kind of split down the middle. One of me was really focused on, trying to make a difference in the world and trying to do things. And the other one was party, but then.
You know what I was? I was the guy. I was the guy leaving class early, dodging the security and sitting in the park getting high.
Well,
and I was that person that everybody modeled marijuana after. And when I finally realized that was what was happening, that's when my whole life changed.
But dude, it was really kind of crazy because like I was involved in acting in school. I participated in all the big plays.
I was in acting. I was in play. I was in drama. I was all that stuff. I went through a period where marijuana kind of became a thing, with the group and with everybody, and you can get settled off with the wrong group, and that tends to happen.
Well, but I think what I did was I had one group that I hung out with at night and another group that I hung out with during the day, and through school I was catching a buzz through most of that. So I was sitting in board of education meetings, and had taken a hit off a joint before I walked in there. So but I could stay focused enough to pay attention. Went through the Marine Corps. When I went through boot camp at Parris Island back in 1974, I literally, it wasn't that I was trying to turn my life around. I was just really trying to stay focused. My idea was to get through the Marine Corps and get through the service so I could have access to that GI Bill and go to college. And I got meritoriously promoted out of boot camp. So I got PFC out of boot camp. I got sent to my first duty station, which was 29 Palms, California.
God bless you, Montel, for going to 29 Palms. Good Lord.
I was in 29 Palms, and I'll tell you a very funny story. I went out there, was supposed to go out there to go right through communications electronics school.
Mm-hmm.
But when I showed up, I literally was walking in. I walked into the admin office, the troop handler office, and they had just lost a couple of troops because they had gotten transferred out early for some reason. There was like a shortage somewhere. And when I walked in the front door, there was a gunny sergeant there who looked at me and said, you want to start school tomorrow, or you want to work in this office for a couple of days because I could use some help. And I was like, I'll work here for a couple of days. Next thing you know, I got shifted over. They delayed me entering school. I became a troop handler. And that was probably one of the best things that happened to me because I just worked administratively for a minute. But in a 2.5 month period of time, I got meritoriously promoted to Lance Corporal.
Mm.
And then I got selected to be meritoriously promoted again to Corporal. But before that happened, the same gunny came up to me and said, dude, I don't know why you're even here. You should be going to the Naval Academy. I said, what do you mean? Where's the Naval Academy at? He said, it's in Maryland. I said, I grew up in Maryland. He said, it's in Annapolis. I said, I grew up 20 minutes from Annapolis. I didn't know of Annapolis. Next thing you know, I'm going off to the Naval Academy Prep School. And went to the Naval Academy Prep School, graduated from the prep school, got my appointment to the academy, went to the Naval Academy. Next thing you know, and now unbeknownst to me, but this is something that I later ended up finding out, is that right before graduation, I had my first episode or bout of MS in the military, and nobody in the entire medical world could understand this because back then in 1980, MS wasn't a disease that was characterized in an African-American male. As a matter of fact, it was a disease that if you looked at all of the, desk references for doctors, it was a disease that was normally afflicted Caucasian women of Northern European descent, which I'm not. And so I got misdiagnosed before my graduation from the academy. I literally was going through an episode or a bout. I went blind, almost half blind in my left eye. I had all these weird neurological disorders that nobody could understand. They sent me to Bethesda, Walter Reed, and the Wells Eyes Clinic, to Johns Hopkins. Nobody could figure it out. I literally got put on a medical hold on my graduation day for 6 months because they were getting ready to actually process me out of the service.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so how long did that episode, did it actually physically take place?
That episode lasted originally for about 3 months, but the visual part of it, because it really affected my vision. I lost almost half the vision in my left eye, and that was there for 6 months. So I had to literally go to Congress to fight, to the Senate to fight to get commission and not be dropped out. And they wouldn't allow me because I had uncorrectable vision to 20/20 in my left eye, unless it was uncorrectable. I couldn't go back in the Marine Corps. So I had to take my commission in the Navy. And I took my commission in the Navy as a special duty intelligence officer. That's why, and I'm the only person to graduate from the Naval Academy, walk across the stage, receive a diploma, and not be commissioned on that day. But I'm also, the only Marine that went through the Naval Academy prep school, graduated from the academy, and didn't go back in the Marine Corps. I went into the Navy, got commissioned as a naval officer, and I was only offered 2 jobs: supply corps or special duty intelligence. I picked special duty intelligence because my language at the Naval Academy was Chinese, so they thought I was a language specialist. So I ended up, graduating from the academy, going right out to as a special duty intelligence officer. I ended up going to, the Defense Language Institute, studying Russian. So I got Russian as my language, and I went to then I ended up becoming what they call direct support cryptologist, which I ended up spending more time at sea than, those people who were fully physically qualified. So it was kind of a crazy.
Yeah.
Dude,
I was wondering what happened there, because I was like, Montel's a Marine, and then he went over to the sailor, even though Tommy over here is a sailor, and I have to make fun of him every day because it's just what I have to do. But now this clears it up why he had to go over to the Navy side.
So I made E4 and then got promoted to O4. So I have both fours. And it was really right before as a special duty intelligence officer, I literally, I was stationed the majority of my time at the National Security Agency, though I spent a stint in Guam. I went there first, was deployed for almost all of that, spent almost all of that at sea on either Kitty Hawk or the USS Halsey in the North Arabian Sea and in Indonesia. We were out there doing the first Libyan shoot down back in 2000.
Oh, shit.
And it was my guys that literally put planes on target, by the way. We're the ones who sent the critic out talking about the fact that these guys said they were going to shoot. And, that intelligence went to the National Security Agency, and then our guys got authorized to put bombs on target. And, a couple of my guys were proud of the fact that they were, the people who actually ended up putting bombs on Muammar's head, though he didn't take them out then, it took out his kids.
Yep.
But we put bombs on target. I got out.
But you were on a submarine for a bit, right?
Well, first I did aircraft carrier cruiser, went from there through the Defense Language Institute, got my degree in Russian, went to the National Security Agency, and became part of the cryptologic direct support submarine operations.
Yeah.
So I've got well over 300 days under the water on 3 different submarine missions. I also was literally on board the we were the cryptologists that were on island in Grenada.
Yep.
During our invasion in Grenada.
Yep.
Then I did my submarine tours, then I did more surface ships. And then, during that period of time at the National Security Agency, I shifted over from submarine ops, which was called Cryptologic Direct Support, and ran a program out of the National Security Agency called Classic Paladin, which was a program that literally housed all the Middle Eastern linguists, the Hebrew, Farsi, and Arabic linguists, that were literally flying missions that were the predecessor to our first Persian Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
So, I ended up running that program. Then I went from there down to Sinkland Fleet and became the N82 to the subland, which was the N82 meeting. I was ran the cryptologic direct support office that actually supplied all the troops to submarines. And at that point, I'll tell you what's weird. Here's how this whole, I know we're getting to how my TV show started, but, my roommate at the Naval Academy, who was serving some duty in recruiting in Kansas State or in Kansas, had volunteered to put on a seminar for what was then called the Big 8 Black Student Union Conference, and called me up and said, dude, look, a couple of my guys fell out. Would you be willing to come in and just do a speech or two at this big conference, to talk about, you don't have to do any recruiting. All you have to do is just talk about leadership and talk about, what it's like to be in the service. I said, yeah, of course, I'll do that. So I flew out. This was January of 1988. I went out and did a couple lectures at this conference, and there were some local students or local teachers that were at this conference in the Kansas City area that said, wow, I really like your speech, man. Would you mind coming to my high school and speaking to some kids in my high school? And I said, well, I got a couple of days left on my leave time, so yeah, I'll go do that. I did that. While I was speaking in this school at that, there happened to be a person who was a representative from the governor of Colorado's office there. And he walked up and said, dude, I love that speech, man. Would you come and speak in Colorado? And I said, excuse me, come and speak in Colorado? I got to do this out of my pocket. First of all, I'm on leave. This isn't something that's sanctioned by the military, dude. I'm just doing this on my own. He said, well, they clearly didn't mind you doing it, so maybe you can come do it for us. And so I said, well, you pick up the tab and I'll do it. So, next thing you know, and before I could even blink, I probably had about 250 different speaking engagements around the country, speaking in schools and speaking before, boards of education on back then. This is in early 88. I was speaking on the topic of, what I called negative youth trends, staying in school, dropping out, and sexing out. And this thing caught wind. I would literally go into a high school, and they would bring the entire school into the auditorium, and I by myself would speak to this entire school population on dropping out, drugging out, sexing out. This started catching the attention of all the local news stations because they were trying to figure out, how does this guy in a uniform hold the attention of all these kids? It got to the point that it got featured one night on NBC Nightly News, and this was in May of 98. So I'm jumping ahead real quick, but I mean, between January of 98 and June of 98, I spoke before probably 60,000 kids across the country, 15, 20 different schools. Matter of fact, Governor Romer, who was a former governor of Colorado, literally flew me out to speak in about 10 schools in Colorado. Governor Mavis of Mississippi flew me into Mississippi to speak in about 10 schools around his state. And I put on this, it was a pretty big presentation. And I don't know if, again, you won't remember this in time, but back then, no one was speaking in schools across America. We had almost close to a 50% dropout rate or a 60% dropout rate in most urban schools, and about a 50% dropout rate in a lot of the, suburban schools. And, I was doing this on my leave time.
That's what I was going to say. You're still in the Navy.
Dude, I'm a special duty intelligence officer. He's like, Single Fleet. And what started happening was I would speak at a school, and every single local news station would show up. ABC, NBC, CBS. The newspapers would show up trying to figure out, how the hell is this guy in a uniform holding these kids' attention? And if you were to see a copy of some of what I was doing, it was a big performance. Back then, there was only one person who was spoken in the school. It was, there was a television production called Scared Straight.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Remember that? There was a guy by the name of Toma, who was a former New York City cop, who was speaking in some schools, but there was no one else visiting schools across this entire country. So NBC Nightly News got a hold of this, and they did a big piece on NBC Nightly News. Back then I had a guy I was speaking with. They did a whole piece on NBC Nightly News. The next morning, they wanted me to appear on the Today Show. And I'll tell you how this happened. If you remember, this is 1988. Nancy Reagan had just said,
Just say no.
So she's at home. I kid you not. This is the truth. She's at home watching the NBC nightly news, and back then I was really a big anti-drug proponent, anti-marijuana, anti-everything proponent. And Nancy must have been in the living room of the White House watching TV, and she said, Ronnie, I don't believe you put these boys in this school, because I was in my uniform. You didn't tell me you had a program for sending military guys in the school. Talk about this program. Then the next morning I'm on the Today Show, and literally while I was sitting on the set of the Today Show, the White House called.
Nice.
They said, when this guy gets off the set, I want you to send him down to Washington, D.C. So I get on the phone and talk to him. I said, look, the president wants to see you.
Dude, tell me what
the man himself wants you.
Like literally, you get that.
It was crazy.
It almost sounds like Forrest Gump.
The next day, I walked off the set of the Today Show and literally went and got on a plane and flew down to Washington, D.C. They shuffled me into this office with then Colin Powell, who was
wow.
NBC.
Yeah.
And he said, when did this program start? I said, this isn't a program.
He's like, wait a second.
Program. Ain't no program.
It's my program.
And that ended up turning into, well, first off, I should back up and tell you that some of the newspaper articles that were being written was Navy sends spy into school to stop kids from using drugs.
So
in school to tell kids to live in a better life. So Nancy saw all this stuff and literally thought that this was a program that was sanctioned by the military, and it wasn't. The chief of naval operations saw this and found out that this wasn't a program sanctioned by anybody. This was just something that I was doing.
Right.
And his partner of mine
Did you get in trouble?
No, but I was told very quickly that, some of these articles that were written, I was a special duty intelligence officer,
right,
crypto officer.
And here they're calling you a spy.
Calling me a spy. I got someone holding some of the highest clearances that our country has, and I'm on the front page of a newspaper talking about helping kids. So they were like, dude, you got to make a choice. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do this. Well, I should back up and also say that appearance on the Today Show and the Night News garnered about 2,400 requests for speaking engagements.
Wow.
So it shut down the phone bank at the Pentagon. It shut down NBC's phone bank in New York. And I very quickly decided to start a nonprofit foundation that I would speak out of, and literally, decided it was time for me to do. I wanted to make a choice. I want to make a difference in this world, and so, I decided to leave the military and do this full time. So for the next 3 years, I spoke to about 1.5 million young people in schools all over the country, colleges, universities, chambers of commerces. I got featured in, Forbes magazine as, almost. I got nominated for their Man of the Year.
Wow.
And it took off. I received almost every award from every organization, from the Chamber of Commerce, the National Chamber of Commerce on down. I started speaking around the country, and I started using my speaking engagements and brought on some corporate sponsors that sponsored me, and started giving back little honorarium scholarships at schools across the country that I was speaking at. And it was because of that again, more and more news programs would come out and see my presentation. I started being asked to do special projects for big organizations like Gannett. I did a presentation at a high school in Florida that they simulcast to about 50 other high schools in the state of Florida.
So did you start getting, I know it was nonprofit, but did you start getting bigger revenue when they're doing the simulcast and pushing those out?
Not only did I get bigger revenue, but what ended up happening was my nonprofit got sponsored by AT&T Technical Schools, by Pepsi,
oh shit,
by several big sponsors around the country. So I started being paid to, if I went into a school, Pepsi would come into school and set the whole thing up, and they would literally say, "You can have Montel Williams if you get those Coke machines out of here." So,
Yeah.
and for that they compensated me for that, and Gannett ended up sponsoring a program again in Florida, in Detroit. I did one program in Denver, Colorado for KCNC that I came from one high school and they simulcast me to like 20 of them at the same time. So the kids were sitting in gymnasiums with this big screen. Back then it wasn't like you could do now, Zoom, these big screen, projectors, and they projected my presentation before, instead of, 1,200 kids, I was speaking to 20,000 kids at the same time. Governor Mavis flew me into Mississippi. I spoke to like 5 schools at the Mississippi's down in Biloxi, Mississippi, at the Biloxi, Mississippi arena. I had like 5 schools in there at the same time. I had like 50,000 kids, listening to me speak, and that caught the attention of several producers in Hollywood who said, "How is this guy holding these kids' attention?" Because it was just me. And, and I sometimes I'd pull kids up out of the audience and use them in skits on the stage. I shoot a couple kids and they, then I talk to them about what happens if you run into the wrong drug dealer, because this could happen to you on the street. And for one of the presentations that I did in Colorado, I ended up winning an Emmy because what happens was I did a school presentation and they said, "Would you mind doing this special for us at the station at night?" We'll call it the 4th R, Kids Rap About Racism. This is back in 1990. I brought high school kids together, and myself and we did a whole hour special on racism and racial strife in schools. This was in Denver, Colorado. I won an Emmy as best talk show host for the region that Colorado was in. That Emmy ended up, information about that ended up on the desk of some pretty big, powerful Hollywood producers who called me and said, "Hey, pal, what are you up to?" And so I flew out to Hollywood, and I'll tell you how quickly this happened. I flew out to California, the day before Christmas Eve, 1990. I met with a pretty powerful Hollywood producer. His name was Freddie Fields at the time. And Freddie and I talked. He said, "Look, this was a great show that you did. You ever thought about being a talk show host?" And if you remember, 1990, I'm going to take you back on a little trip in memory lane. There were only 4 talk shows on the air back then. It was Oprah, Sally, Phil, and Geraldo.
Yep.
Regis and Kathy weren't even considered a talk show. They were considered a morning entertainment show. So I said to Freddie, "Yeah, if you think we can pull this off." Well, by January of 1991, I was having meetings with every syndication company in the country. By April of 1991, I signed a contract, April 15th.
So 4 months later.
Flew out to LA on May 5th, shot a few practice shows. May 8th, those shows went on the air. And the next thing you know, I'm signing a contract for first 13 weeks, then for, the rest of the year to finish a talk show. And this is before normal television seasons begin. I was on the air in May. Television seasons don't start until September. And that year, I'll take you on a little trip down memory lane. John Tesh and Lisa Gibbons had a talk show.
Yep.
Chuck Woolery had a talk show.
Mm-hmm.
Jane Pratt, who was the editor of 17 magazine, had a talk show. Let me see. Chuck Woolery, John and Lisa. Oh, Ronald Reagan Jr. had a show. They were considered this new wave of talk shows. My show had already been on the air since May. Though I was only on at about 26 stations around the country, I was already being compared to and became part of the old guard. All those other shows became the new shows. So I was compared against Oprah, Phil, Sally, Geraldo. The new shows were compared against Montel, Oprah, Phil, Sally, Geraldo. And, not one of those shows lasted. All of those shows went off the air. Remember, John Tess and Lisa Gibbons, they threw out John Tess and Lisa kept the show the next year. But since the time I went on the air, 126 other shows came and went. And I was still on the air 17 years later.
Wow.
Because I was one of the original guard. And, I started the show again in May. By September of that year, I realized very quickly that I needed to literally kind of take a little bit more control over this thing. I entered Hollywood, dude. I just literally pulled my uniform off.
Yeah.
I was Lieutenant Commander Montel Williams. I'm out here barking orders and yelling at people and screaming at people, but I realized that I wanted to do something a little different. If you look back and think back in time, dude, during the summer of that year, which was, really, let me think, we get around 1991, salaciousness was the rule of the day. Everybody's show was salacious.
Yep.
Oprah's, Phil's, Geraldo's, Sally's. And, I wanted to do something a little bit more higher brow or a little bit more non-salacious from the standpoint of exploiting big boobs or exploiting strippers. I started talking about more issues. And I think that's what kind of kept me in people's living rooms for 17 years. I had a mandate of my producers that we focus on not what happens as much as we try to focus on why things happen, and we try to come up with solutions. And, we were the first show in the history of television to hire a staff psychiatrist that was there to do one thing and one thing only, and that was to provide services to guests, not in a green room after the show, but after they left the show and went home. So, we started working with her, and I think that's what kept me on the air for as long as I was on the air.
17 years. Like, I mean, you look at
200 shows.
You look. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you look at what you've done in your life. Your kids have got to be proud.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think, I have always been about trying to do things to make a difference on this planet. I mean, I talk about it quite a bit. It's like, if we really stop and think about it, if I ask the two of you right now to name 20 historical people that you know of that influence your life, and I put you on the spot right now and said, can you name 20 of them? I'm not trying to say anything crazy. I bet you'd have a hard time coming up with 20 names.
Yes.
You start going through them, but you can't remember. Okay, well, stop and think about that. There have been probably, 12 billion people. I mean, if you think that we really are truly, we have 7 billion people on the planet right now. Since man became man, there have been about, 9 to 10, 12 billion people who have graced this planet. And none of us individually can name more than about 10. So what kind of impact do you have while you're here?
Yeah, I think, you're 100% correct on that. And I have a thing that I believe, because I can't name 20, there's a lot of truth to that. But I can tell you there's 200 that have influenced me in different phases of my life and different directions that I've gone in a positive way. Can I name every one of them? No. I could thank everyone, and you would be one of those people, because the issues that you were talking about at that time affected people all over the planet in different ways. And how everybody receives that is it. Do they remember Montel helped them through this? No, they don't, but they got through it.
And a lot of people don't remember. This was pre-internet. I'm fortunate that my show was on before the internet, because the internet probably would have shut us down. But, pre-internet, we were the internet. We were the first ones that talked about HIV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were the first ones to talk about transgender. We were the first ones to talk about, different sex relationships. We were the first ones to talk about women being abused at home, children being abused at home. We were the first ones that covered the first, mass shootings in this country. We did those. We brought those things into your living room to put it in your face to make you have to deal with it. And though some of the topics weren't the best, we did open up the discussion. We were the original reality TV.
There's a lot of things that came across that never would have came across, especially in that time. Now, of course, we have internet. That's a whole different ballgame now. Anything you want is at the fingertips. At that time, like you said, you were watching these shows. This was reality shows. This is what you had outside of news or TV programming. This was reality, and it was real issues that understandably were affecting people in many different ways. And it was helping people to raise their kids. It was helping kids to understand why they were feeling the way that they were. It was helping people with HIV to understand they're not alone. There's all that exposure, and that's why you were on for 17 years.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed my time being invited into people's living rooms, and I was very fortunate that I was like one of the only shows that a lot of parents would let their kids watch when they came home from school.
Yeah.
And
not Jerry Springer.
But people don't remember. Jerry tried to start his show off the same way mine was and others was, and really got no traction.
No, and the funny thing is he would go through and do all the shit that he did. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Springer was a next level of that reality side of it. And at the very end, he'd sit on the stage and go, "Final thoughts." It's like, I just watched.
What do we see here today?
I just talked about the cousin that had sex with her mom and this and this and this. And, well, guys, be kind to each other.
But most people don't remember that Jerry Springer also was the vice mayor who got busted for writing a check for a prostitute before he started the show.
That's right.
But, the thing is that back then, though it seems like when we look back, most people only remember the salacious, but there were things that happened on Talk TV that, had it not happened on Talk TV, we wouldn't have made some societal changes that we've made.
Yeah, I think Phil Donahue was another person that kind of hit those edges that people didn't want to really exploit. I think he was there, but when you came on, it was like a whole different. We're going to talk about this shit, and it's going to be open, and that's what I remember. Really, I mean, I truly watched your show like all the time, and I think that was like you're saying, you slipped between the top four at the time and kind of slid in as the number 5, but then set the pace for how everybody else came in, and then other people obviously made other decisions. Do you miss it? I'm thinking, do I miss the fact that there's nothing like it on television. I miss the fact that, I have people say it to me all the time. I have an opinion or I have a voice that I think right now our times could use. Right.
I mean, I have opinions about things, and I look at things in different ways than other people do. I think, truly, I vote as an independent. I register as an independent because I look at issues. I don't give a shit about anybody else's opinion. And excuse me for saying it that way, but I do. If somebody is willing to look through the issue and research it and understand what it is they're talking about, then I'll stop and listen.
Mm-hmm. I believe that we need to get back to your voice counts. I believe we've lost a lot of ground with Democrat, Republican, and all this stuff. And I think you just, no matter how you look at it, you've got to kind of form your own opinion, but your voice counts no matter how this goes down.
But you have to have your own voice. The problem is today, you said it yourself. Right now we're living in an internet time where you have all this information at your fingertips. But most people can just look up an answer and give an answer and spit it out, but they don't even know what the answer means.
Not only that, they don't, they think that Google is the answer and that it produces the right answers. It doesn't.
Well, there's no critical thought with things anymore. People are just regurgitating that. They're not actually looking at the issue, dissecting, and come up with their own opinion. Now, the news told me this, so that has to be true.
Right. They won't even stop for a second. I mean, look at the industry that we're in.
Yep.
I mean, people just will grab an article about CBD and try to regurgitate it, but they don't even understand how it affects the body.
Right.
They don't understand that CBD is not the only thing. They don't understand that THC is not the only thing. They don't understand that THCA, THCV, the variants aren't the only thing. There's CBD, CBG, CBC. There's so much more to this plant than just what you're told. And,
we're just getting started.
Yeah, we're like the Wright brothers pushing a wooden hill, a plane down a hill.
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
Well,
so
we need critical thinking. Yes. Go ahead.
What does Montel do for fun? Like, what are you? Do you paint? Do you know?
Well, I try my best. Right now, I still continue to try to exercise and stay in the gym as much as I can. I'm not doing. I tell you, COVID. Like I've gotten the COVID stink, like so many of us have. And that's just sick of this being hunkered down. However, I enjoy being hunkered down with my wife. So for me, my wife, we are media junkies in the sense that we literally love to go through the streaming services and find a good series and sit down and watch and try to just disappear for a little while. But I also, I know it's going to sound strange. I have a voracious appetite for knowledge. I probably spend, at least, an hour every day reading everything that I can put in front of me. I'll go through, some, website and I'll look up the article and I read the article from the top to the bottom. I want to read through and find out why. Why has always interested me. Not necessarily how or what, but why. So, if I see something written today, New Mexico just passed, or they got a bill on the governor's desk to pass recreational cannabis. I want to go back and find out who was involved in that, why, who got the movement going, what are they thinking they're going to accomplish by it. And that did just happen. I mean, so I have a voracious appetite for knowledge. I want to learn as much as I possibly can.
I think for 17 years, what I could say is Montel was our Google. Like you were bringing, I don't read. I mean, not that I don't read, but I'm not the one like you're saying where you sit down and, I've never been big on the reading side in that way. But But if Montel's reading, I'm listening.
I tell you, one of the things that's so funny about that is that I'm a kid from the ghetto, man. My family was born in the ghetto. I was born and raised in the ghetto for the first 5 years of my life, and for almost 6 years of my life. And one of the things that my mother, I'll never forget this. And God bless her soul. Some of my earliest memories is being dragged by my older sister. I was 3, 4, 5 years old. Going to the library and having to check out 2 books. I mean, my mother required it of us, it was to go home. You're not going to sit around and just do nothing.
Right.
So we sat around and we read. My father used to demand that we came to the dinner table with having every single day that he was home. He came to the dinner table with at least 5 words that you could read, write, spell, and regurgitate the Webster's Dictionary definition of. One of the proudest things that my father had done for us when we were younger was bought the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. And, he said, I bought this damn thing. You're going to read them.
Listen, that was a lot of money then.
You ain't kidding.
A ton of money.
You ain't kidding. But so as a kid, I used to just journey around the world, reading passages out of books. So, and I think that that's what's so sad about today, because most people, again, they don't read, they just look up an answer.
Yep.
They don't even understand what the answer means. They'll just look it up and then they'll go spit it out at a party as if they're knowledgeable about something that they don't know anything about.
Yeah. When I really need to know something, then I read.
Yeah.
But I don't, honestly, I could lie, but I don't find myself sitting curled up with a book and really enjoy it. That's, on my part of it. But I do, the knowledge in the industry is important to me, and finding out the true facts of what is happening. That's where I like to land.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same for me. Like I don't like novels. For me to sit down and read a novel, a biography, maybe
right.
If there's
I love biographies. Yeah. If I'm in, that's it.
Yeah. If there's a reason why it's a particular person, I might read a biography, but I'm more of a article reader or a fact finder. So I like to, I'll Google something and look up, if I'm, thinking about right now, I'm getting ready to go back in the lab and do some formulations of my, products that I've had out And so I'm doing some reading right now on, and breaking down cannabinoids and breaking down terpenes and breaking down flavonoids and breaking down, endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, trying to see if I can understand, their synergistic effect with one another, and then make sure that what I formulate, number one, wouldn't be toxic, but number two, will have the effect that I'm trying to purport it has.
And Montel, you took a trip out to Israel, didn't you, to see what they were doing? Could you maybe talk a little bit about that and what you learned?
Oh man, I went to Israel. This is back in 2011. I literally spent some time in, Dr. Meshulam's laboratory in Israel, and got a chance to actually film him and talk to him on film. And I learned so much while I was out there looking at, all the different departments. Number one, that he wasn't the only person working on cannabis, but I sat down with, one of the people in their military. This is back in 2011 when the Israeli military understood cannabis's ability to help their soldiers with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was amazed at all of the varied forms of research that was going on in cancer, in seizures and other things back in 2011.
Oh yeah.
And it's just now starting to percolate now here in this country. There's so much that we've known about this plant for now well over 30 years and thanks to research that was done in Israel. Remember, Dr. Meshulam was the guy who actually discovered not only THC and CBD, but he also discovered, the endocannabinoid system and what the receptors were that were actually feeding off of cannabinoids. And, and I should say that research, some of that research was funded by the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
I was shocked. That was probably one of the biggest shocks that I had in my life, was the fact that how much money that our government had spent in another country to help them figure out cannabis rather than doing it at home alone. And though we were also already studying cannabis at the University of Mississippi, albeit with some dank, nasty weed.
Oh yeah,
but we were studying then, and still.
Sorry, Montel. It's great to hear that. Some dank, nasty weed.
That's probably some of the most, fungi.
Oh, it's crazy. It's got mold. It's got all that crap, and we're giving it to people to research on it. You're like, what are you? Wouldn't you make it here in California? To go out on the adult use market. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, at least I guess the DEA did last year, issue that order that you can study stuff that's coming out of our own dispensary. So that was a breakthrough, I think.
Yeah, well, that's how we got our study. Yeah, so we're actually able to do that now, not with the NIDA stuff. So absolutely.
So what's next? What?
Well, I'm chomping at the bit right now, trying to get a deal done that will. Partner me up with one of the larger cannabis companies here on the East Coast that is going to become my contract manufacturer for my own CBD and THC products.
Nice.
And, I've got some exciting, I think, some breakthrough delivery system mechanisms and some breakthrough formulations that I hope will start to reverberate again the same way the first time I entered this fray. I put out a product that was one of the first products that literally had a specific terpene formulation added to, a THC CBD formulation, all in one. That and I'm just fingers crossed and praying.
It'll happen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It'll happen. Dude, listen, you haven't failed. You haven't failed. This is just the next step. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. And, I'm also, doing a lot more. I'm doing a lot more with my podcast, but I'm flying out tomorrow to go act in a feature film that's being shot in Philadelphia. So,
good for you.
Give Philly my best. I miss her.
Well, and, I've been in what's called development. So I'm working on a lot of different projects from film to, dramatic dramatizations and dramatic series. So hopefully some of this will start to come to fruition in the next year or so.
Oh, it is. And so when these things start to come out, don't hesitate to let us know. So our little thing over here can at least promote and do what we can to get out on that side of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm excited about the project that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. This is one that's kind of like, in today's right out of snatched out of today's headlines, but it's about the period of time that Officer Chauvin spent some time in jail while he was waiting for his trial that's going on right now. So it's a short film focused in on that period right now. So I'm gonna shoot that, and that'll probably be out within the next couple of months.
Good for you. Good for you.
You know, Montel, a question for me. You've been around a lot of high-powered people in your life. Was it intimidating to be in the presence of perhaps the most talented Navy sailor, Harmon Rabb?
What's that now? Say that again?
Was it intimidating being around probably the most successful, versatile Navy sailor in the history of our country, Harmon Rabb?
No, I got to tell you, one thing, I am not really that intimidated by any.
Yeah, you really have to ask him that.
No, Harmon Rabb from JAG could do everything. I mean, the guy was a lawyer. He was a fighter pilot, jumping out of airplanes.
Well, you know what was a trip about that was that that character that I played, and it was really funny. That character was literally the predecessor to NCIS.
Yeah.
Don Belisario literally wrote that character because he was intending to, blow up the next series after JAG, which was going to be NCIS. And, if you go back at those 3 episodes that I did on JAG, or 2 episodes I did, literally are still in the top 10 of their 100 episodes.
Okay.
And it was well written. I really was played Rivers.
Yeah, Lieutenant Rivers, a Navy SEAL.
And then became Lieutenant Commander Rivers.
Oh, okay. You got promoted. All right.
Did you forget that?
How dare I?
And the first time I was on, I received the Medal of Honor. The second time I was on, I was kidnapped by some supremacists and getting ready to be killed.
He was there with you every single time.
And then the third time I was on where they tried to court-martial me again.
Oh, man. They just wouldn't let you be.
But, it was the last episode because, what happened was Don wanted to continue that character and keep him on.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was, if you remember, I was found innocent of all of the toughest charges, but found guilty of one charge. And then the Navy was kind of pushing back on having a real guy, having that guilty thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So political.
No, it's funny because one of our friends, Andy, who's actually our cultivator, and he was a Marine Raider with me, but he's pretty close friends with Bill Goldberg, and he's on NCIS, and he plays a Marine Raider. So we have a deal that if he is getting taken down by some insurgents, it has to be us. He gets to shoot us on TV. So we want to try to get out there a little bit.
It was really, really fun. One of I'll never forget the night that we literally had to go and get in the bay. We were simulating a raid. It was my first episode. We were simulating a raid of this terrorist camp. And it was like, oh man, it must have been 11:30 at night, and we were out in the bay off the coast of Los Angeles in those Zodiac boats swimming up. I remember we had to shoot that maybe 4 or 5 times because the first time I think one of the camera operators even dropped the camera in the water, so we had to do it again, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, now that the military ruined the ocean for me. We would have to do the over the horizon swim-ins and then go do the raid and then come back and go through the Pacific, and it was very emotional times for me, Montel. I'll say that time in the middle of the night trying to get through the surf zone.
I can tell you, I can understand how that would turn me off to want to go sit on the beach.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore.
Well, it's very funny. I literally, from the time I got out, I went back. I took the Montel Williams show. I'm one of the only shows in television history. We went to the North Arabian Gulf twice.
Okay, nice.
And I took the show out there from the Montel Williams show. We took it out there because what I would do every year is that I would get messages from family members at home and then take those out there to the ships and talk to the guys that were deployed and try to bring them a little bit of spirit.
Hell yeah.
But after I think it was the Ike or the end of, I can't remember what was the last carrier that I was on, I literally didn't touch a ship again, didn't go out on a boat again until a friend of mine who owns a 110-foot yacht and a 130-foot yacht invited me to go out on his yacht. I was like,
that's a little different experience.
World.
Yeah, those are the kind of boats I like.
Yeah,
Wow.
There you go. One friend with a yacht. Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Well, listen, I got to thank you again.
Yeah, it's been
This
great.
is like so much fun.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. And you're not done. You got a long ways to go.
No, man, I talk about it all the time. You know, I've really had almost 3 different 17-year careers in my life. You know what I mean? I did 17 years I did really, my career in the military spanned 22 years, but I've got like 18 and a half years active on that. And then, I did 17 years of a talk show, and now I'm doing 20 years of post talk show advocacy and the things that I'm doing.
Now you're going into acting and activist.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you have been.
I'm definitely going to stay an activist, and I'm definitely cultivating this cannabis, business that I'm working on. So I'll definitely come back to you when our products are ready, and I'll give you some information about what I'm doing with them. I think you'll like them. I think I've got something that, again, I got to do it in every state, so I got to find a partner.
Hey, here we are.
Come on. Don't threaten us with a good time, Montel.
You can come out and check out our manufacturing. It's literally right here.
I have a product delivery system that I think could be a game changer.
Is it like for dosing and things of that nature?
It's for dosing, but it's also it's a better way to package and to utilize and to actually, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, we got you.
Let's just say when you get to the point where you can talk about it, I would love to be able to throw it out on here.
Absolutely.
I would love to be able to throw it out on here.
Because even Montel, with some of our research, there's some of the things we want to look at. So we already got our one IRB, but we're going to get another one after this to kind of move a little bit more forward. So, if there's something there that we can work on, that would be pretty badass.
Well, you know what? If this deal gets signed, the company that I'm working with here on the East Coast has a really huge reach, and I will bet you that they would, if I let them know that they've been very interested in all of the synergisms that I've been able to make in this industry. So, we're looking for a left coast, partner. So this might be a good place to start.
There we go.
It'll make my mom happy. I was telling her again today. I'm like, I'm talking to Montel. She's like, do you guys talk every week? I'm like, sure. This is what we do. But she wants me to say she loves you and thank you for letting us watch you, and you were always welcome into our living room. So checking the box for mom right there.
Oh, shit.
Tell her I said hi. She's doing well.
Will do.
Well, listen, once again, thank you. Let's not forget to go to Montel's podcast, Let's Be Blunt, right?
Absolutely. Please do.
If you haven't, you really have to, because the Montel show does continue. It continues on his podcast. That really is, it's still live and kicking. And anything else that comes on board, once again, we'd love to be a part of promoting in any way that we can, especially on the cannabis side. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the things that I can't remember that you did for me. And the things that you're doing now. I'm sure everybody thanks you. And what an amazing person, man. It's so nice when we get to meet somebody that, has been a part of our life in that way, and to find out that they're just really fucking cool.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, Montel. After your interview, we called each other that night. We're like, dude, we just got interviewed by Montel Williams. Like, kind of was like that like surreal moment for us. We're like,
we've had some cool people, but I was like, he goes, dude, that was fucking Montel.
Yeah, it's like the man himself.
All the other people, I go, yeah, you're right. It's crazy. So listen, thank you. Let's be blunt. Once again, guys, PV Unfiltered. We do this. It's free. It's fun. And the biggest thing is to understand this, is that cannabis isn't that monster. You're talking about a guy. Look at this. This is Montel. Started smoking. He was 14 years old. Same as me. Anybody else? I mean, you couldn't ask for a better role model for somebody to follow and to understand and to be an activist in what's happening. This is just cannabis, guys. Let's everybody come together and make this stuff happen. PV Unfiltered.
Look, dude, I'll tell you, PV Unfiltered, You guys are doing it. You're really, really, really banging it. And I hope that people continue to enjoy your podcast the way they have been. And again, anytime you want to talk about other issues around cannabis, holler.
You got it.
Done.
Thank you. Peace out, Montel.
Thanks, Montel.
Love you, man. All right.
Hey, wait, one more thing before you go.
Okay.
Before you go, please beg all of your watchers, all of your listeners to send a letter to this guy in the White House and remind him of the promises that he made 6 months ago, claiming that he was going to do something in the first 100 days. Remind him of the mindset that he made us have an impression that he had that he clearly doesn't have. So maybe it's time for us to start educating him and this vice president that, cannabis is just what you said. It's just cannabis, guys. Come on now. Stop being stupid and let's change the law and let's make this available to everyone who needs it.
God bless you, Montel.
I'd like to say it again, but you actually said it. So you guys got it. You got it from Montel. I'm not going to say it again. We'll continue on, though.
Thank you, Montel.
Thanks.